Hello, this is Francesca Vigliani from Cloud Academy. Thank you for joining us for this webinar. Today, we're going to talk about how to create a scalable technology training program. Let me introduce you to our solutions engineer, Mark Smith, and our head of market research, Alex Brower, who will guide you through best practices and show you how to implement a successful training program on Cloud Academy. Without further ado, let me pass the baton to Mark and Alex.
Thanks so much, Francesca, and thank you everyone for joining. We're very excited to be speaking with you today, so appreciate you taking the time out. This is being recorded, so you can go back and listen if you should like later on. Additionally, we will have an opportunity in the chat if you want to ask a few questions. We'll do a Q&A session at the very end, so feel free to pop those in there and we'll monitor it. Just a quick introduction from myself, and I'm going to turn it over to Alex, our head of market research, to go ahead and get started with the presentation. I'm a solutions engineer here at Cloud Academy, so part of my role here, I work with our customers, and a lot of what we're going to be talking about, actually all of it, is really what our team of solutions engineers works with, setting up these 4 pillars to establish a training objectives and help organizations meet their milestones in digital transformation. So I'll add some color to some specific stories and things that we're doing, and towards the end of the presentation, I'll pop into our platform and show you exactly how you can do this with our software. I want to pass it over now to Alex, again, our head of market research, to go ahead and get started and take us to the presentation. So Alex, over to you, man.
Over 90% of corporate training is really a waste of time, or at least that's what Harvard Business Review estimated. In their most recent issue, they estimate that less than 10% of the $200 billion corporate training and development market delivers concrete results. It never gets applied on the job. A big reason for that is context. And another big reason for that are traditional training mechanisms that we try to apply to the cloud industry, where the velocity and variety of change cause them to bend and break. We've got video-based solutions, legacy LMS solutions, which lack an interactive component, right? It makes it difficult to transfer skills from what you're learning in training to the job. They often don't even attempt to measure impact. I don't want to pick on you too much here, Mark, because I know you come from the instructor-led training world, but you've got in-person training, which is by definition static as of a given point in time. I think it's difficult to measure effectiveness. It's not difficult to measure in terms of its cost, right? You're taking people out of the business, you're sending them away for a day or two. And then finally, go ahead, Mark. I don't know if you have any color to add on
on the in-person training. I believe there's several people that enjoy learning that way. I completely understand that. But the main issue and what I saw prior to transferring or transitioning over into the digital training space is again the fact that it's static. By the time you're out of class, they probably released a new service that they're doing it a different way. Things are just done differently. And again, the measurement aspect of it, we'll talk about a little bit later. It's just extremely difficult. I was consistently asked, how do I know that my employees are learning when they come out of the class? And oftentimes, the only way you knew is if they passed the certification. So, that's not necessarily the best way to gauge it. And again, in the cost-conscious world, ILT is extremely expensive. So, all great points there.
Yeah, you mentioned certifications. That's the last kind of pillar of the traditional training model, and it's actually not even really training, right? You train to prepare for a certification exam, which is really aligned to the desires of the vendor. For organizations who are forward-looking, right, those incentives are a bit misaligned. And after all, you can pop to the next slide here. We're not trying to create paper tigers, right? We want to build true practitioners. Next slide. We're trying to build leaders, not followers, right? We want to build a program that allows our organization to drive toward a future state of excellence, not irrelevance. And that's really what the 4 pillars of the an effective training program really seek to address. It's about taking some very practical business practices and principles and applying them to training. It's shocking how many organizations come from a place where that's just not done. So the first best practice is to really tie your training to higher order business initiatives. One of the big reasons that 90% of the corporate training market is a complete waste is because employees need the opportunity to understand how the training that they're taking is going to impact the organization and their day-to-day jobs. So most organizations have a roadmap of some sort, transformation roadmap. Make sure that those goals are clearly defined. Right, some good examples of good goals are like to reduce compute costs by a certain percentage point by a certain date using a tactic like app modernization, not necessarily just to get some arbitrary goal of getting 100% of employees certified with a specific vendor. Right, make it about your business and how each employee can move the needle, and encourage them to think about that as they're going through training.
Yeah, one thing that stands out here for me on the gauging of readiness, I can pull from a recent example working with a customer, a new customer, just some basic, running some apps through PCF in AWS, and they realized that this was a kind of a quick fix and it wasn't sustainable. The lift and shift model was not something that they wanted to do either. But the readiness factor, being able to gauge that, there were a wide variety of skill gaps. Some people had certifications, but they were what we talk about with paper tigers, no real understanding of how to do the work. So they realized that the milestones that they wanted to set with dates, they kind of had an idea of what they wanted to do, begin, obviously developing cloud native applications, but to be able to set the timelines to that, they wanted to be able to establish a baseline of what everyone didn't know, where the skill gaps were. So they had to go through an assessment component to do that. Once they're able to kind of understand where they're at, and being able to reskill some of their existing employees, they could begin to create a more clear picture and understand what's the length of time that we're going to have to invest into making sure that our employees are adequately trained, so we can actually hold accountable to the date that we're putting together for these milestones, because you will be held accountable for those. So that's a big one for me on the gauging of readiness.
Yeah, I think those are good points, Mark. The quickest way and the surest way to lose face with your staff is to put a roadmap out there that doesn't take into consideration the skills within your organization or lack thereof, right? You get everyone at the water cooler standing around saying, geez, there's no way we're going to hit that date, right? So by formulating a training strategy that's really closely coupled with the roadmap, to the extent you can see that roadmap, that will serve to generate trust within your organization, right? And I think another way to generate that trust and to maintain that trust is to clearly communicate how you're going to measure readiness and how you're going to measure achievement of those business goals.
Right.
So again, this seems like some obvious stuff, but we've seen it work. The second best practice is to really focus on your people, right? Focus on those key roles which are going to help you move the organization toward the future state that's desired, and that usually takes place through a formalization of the champions, right? You're putting together a cloud center of excellence, or formulating, better yet, a skills advisory panel which pulls from subject matter experts within the organization to really help align the training and the curricula to where you need to be, right? Part of that requires role definition. Some organizations are at a point where they're redefining roles every 12 to 18 months. Sometimes there's a big shift. We've got some technical roles and some starter templates up on our website, publicly available. It's the URL is there. Everyone will receive this presentation via email. You can go to it, check it out. It's a starting point, right? Those are the technical roles. Don't forget about the business roles. I think, Mark, you can comment on this probably, but one thing that I've heard time and again is, a director of IT telling me, man, do you have anything that I can send to my, my business units about CapEx versus OpEx? And some of the stuff that, just working with the public cloud is so different from what folks are used to. Don't forget the basics. Don't ensure that there's a level of fundamental knowledge across the organization, because you're going to have to work with the business units after all.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, in the context of digital transformation, and moving forward into implementing a DevOps, a culture of DevOps, you can't leave out roles. You can't minimize any role and what part they're going to play in that. If you want to have a true transformation in the way that you're doing business and the way people are thinking, it's important to make sure that the training matches up to the roles that they actually have. So your program managers, your project managers, making sure that they, the cloud adoption framework, such a great model. We have, those are things that we have available that people can go in from a business unit to high level executives. Just the basics they need to know, cost optimization, things like that, to getting down when you actually establish the milestones, moving infrastructure into the cloud into AWS by a certain time, or developing cloud native apps. These are all things that you set in a milestone, but what are the roles that are going to be critical to that? Do you start with some of the targeted, starter training plans that we have? You figure that out after an assessment, but ultimately you can tailor those. You can make those very applicable. We've done this, for a recent organization with, a lofty goal of 80% of their infrastructure migrated over by the end of 2019, developing cloud native applications by the end of Q3. We set out some pretty aggressive training plans for them, embedding security into all of it. And then again, next steps forward are working on the more automation side of things and things like that as well. So this is exciting times, and it's really great to work with the customers on these pillars and understand, and see them, the kind of light bulbs go off, and see the impact that it has amongst all the roles in their organization. A lot of forward-thinking organizations out there we're working with, which is exciting.
Yeah, and I think there was one more bullet point there, which we risk beating a dead horse here, but make it relevant, right? Make it specific, make it relevant to each job role, and define those target skill sets for folks. Let them know what matters, right? Yeah. And don't let them get stale. The industry is moving faster than any of us really can, so that requires you to revisit those key roles and the target skill sets and a way to measure it. We recommend every 6 months or so.
Yep.
All right, now we can go on to the next one, Mark. All right, so as you go to identify a training strategy, I want everyone to really think about the last big project, which cost interdepartmental focus and perhaps a little bit of anxiety, right? Maybe your last re-architecture project or the last crisis you had to deal with. Where we see customers successful is when they apply the same level of resources and the same sense of urgency that they did in those situations, but to their training program. And that really means defining the problem, understanding the gap, right? Where are we today? Where do we need to be? Planning out that program, right? Planning an initial training cycle, and then having checkpoints, right? Measurable checkpoints. I think that we've talked about this a little bit, but on the context side, part of what Harvard Business Review found in their piece was that there are two key pieces of context which are lacking typically in corporate training. Social context. Who's doing this training with me? Who's involved? Who owns this project? And functional context. Why does this skill matter? How am I going to use it? We add in there temporal context. When do I need to have this completed by? How does it relate to the roadmap, and what's next, right? So really try to take a business-like approach to how you put this program together, because the default behavior is to kind of wave our hands at these things and say, yeah, we'll do skill gap analysis now or later. We'll do it based on a survey. Try to take a real measurable approach to this stuff.
Yeah, I love the part here, applying that same sense of urgency to training that you do in, your last re-architecture or whatever your last emergency was. It was kind of all hands on deck. Being in the training industry in IT for the past better part of 6, almost 7 years, I have seen organizations that are providing, training for a quote unquote check the box that can quickly get out of hand, and before you know it, turn into some type of emergency compliance thing. It's just a lot of different things that can go on. Checking a box is not the way to go about getting your training done. That's why you share this. 90% of it goes to waste. Don't look at this as a check the box. Apply that sense of urgency, and when you do that, you start to see and your employees kind of take that they take that cue and treat the training seriously. So we are seeing that. We're seeing a wide scale adoption when this is rolled out the right way of a large subset and group of people needing to be trained. They're taking this stuff seriously. I mean, you have to get back to some fundamentals. The people that are kind of quote unquote born in the cloud are already gobbled up in some areas. If not, they're really going to be expensive to bring into your team. So you may have to reskill some existing employees. We're working with organizations to do that. Traditional network engineers and sysadmins, it's kind of the way that organizations are doing things. It's really encouraging some of these organizations how forward thinking they are and how willing they are to train people that are in a current role to train them for success and moving into another one. I was recently on site in a meeting with one of the sales reps here and got a chance to witness a student that was going to be involved in the training telling us about, he was given a directive to be able to go in and they wanted him to move the application to a cloud, so a lift and shift, but he had no idea how to do that, no clue what EC2 was, nothing. Just didn't have any idea. Once he got a chance to look at a learning path to kind of walk through some of that and how he could comprehend it, you could see the light bulb kind of go off, a really structured path. So just kind of, the fire drills and things like that, we're slowly starting to see those things pushed out, and really focused training efforts are coming into play, which is super exciting to see as well.
We talk about applying a sense of urgency to training, and ultimately, if you're in the office right now, if you look around, there's probably some real estate, some residual intellectual property, some product that needs to be maintained, right? There's maybe a brand, but ultimately, it's your people who are going to define the difference between irrelevance and excellence for your organization 4, 5, 6 years in the future, maybe even less. So put a program behind it. If part of that program includes the ability to assign training, leverage that. Really set expectations that training is valued and that it will be iterative, right? That it will take place in cycles, and then measure. And it's not just about measuring effort; it's about measuring outcomes. Where was your skills gap? Did you effectively address it? Where are we headed in the future? What methodologies will we need to know? And you need to be somewhat agile in your definition of those things, because the world around us changes, right? And I think the last bullet point there, Mark, brings into the conversation about the world changing beyond just the public cloud providers. It's also about competition, right? And your ability to go to market in a speedy way when things start changing.
Yeah, who can get there first? I mean, I know I joked with you, and in all seriousness, no, your people define the difference between irrelevance and excellence for your organization. Just a really powerful statement. I told Alex that I believe we could get that one trending. I mean, it's a really awesome, I believe, quote, and I think that it's absolutely key. Your employees, as they see you're investing in them and working towards their future, begin to take more pride in what they're doing. There are things on the platform, which I'll share with you in a moment, that will create some stickiness for them. It will create some desire for them to want to go out and train. They'll have these ability to go and research different skills at their fingertips. So we're seeing that take hold. And investing in employees is a great way. Is a really phenomenal way to get to a point where you're above your competition. You are first to market with things that you want to get out there, and it truly pays off. So excellent
Yeah.
point there as well.
And there are a couple companies that we think are really doing it right. On Cognizant has moved almost 85% of their technology training to digital delivery, upskill over 100,000 employees. We won't go through all of these, but SaaS, directly delivering client value to their customers by upskilling all of their employee or customer facing business units. Just really powerful stuff. And these are places where they've really developed a strong culture of learning and continuous improvement. And that's just so important. I think the point here is that you don't have to go it alone, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And the great thing about these are the fact that our team of solutions engineers like myself, we've got a team of customer success representatives that work with you. These are implementing these pillars, working with the software that we have. It's not, hey, thanks for purchasing, good luck, have fun with it. This is a true partnership that we're working with. So these are companies that have really looked at it, and it's created a change in the way they're evaluating vendors. They're looking at things very differently by the way that we set this partnership up. So we are truly invested in their success. So with that partnership, we walk through, set up these things that I'm going to be showing you on the platform, but ultimately establishing these pillars with them, and then they're off to the races and running. So with that, I'm going to pop over right now into a demo environment. I just want to show
slides, Mark. Enough with the slides. Let's get into the demo.
Yeah, exactly. Let's put some context to this on the platform. So I want to be able to put this in perspective for you, to show you exactly how you can use this platform to implement those 4 pillars. The first thing I want to tell you, this is a dashboard when someone logs into the platform. So this is more of an end user view. I want to share some of that with you in a moment. I'm going to show you what our training library looks like, how the learning paths are structured. That is going to be towards the end of the demo, but in the interest of making sure that you can see how, from a management perspective, you can implement these products that we have, I want to switch over to the management view first. So with that, I'm going to start first with this concept of teams. This is still part of the defined and established pillar. You're going to set up your teams in a way that are going to mirror. It's like a classroom environment. You put people together, similar skill, they're on the similar skill levels, but more importantly, the same skill objectives. So you want to put those people together. When it comes to the roles on the platform, we have administrators who are like super users. They see all of the reporting and analytics, assessments, training plans. They add members, so they're true super user. But we have members who are consuming the training, and we have these team managers. So over each of these teams, where you're putting together applicable training for them, there is a team manager that you can assign, which is going to have the ability for them to monitor the analytics, the skill profiles, assign training plans, things that I'm going to show you in a moment, which takes some of that burden off of the admin. So again, the team manager is a really great function. And again, establishing these teams, which roles are most important when you're rolling out and moving into your digital transformation. Go about assessing them as the next step. Assessments are pretty quick, pretty easy. I'll show you really quickly a couple of the ones that we have. These are assessments on AWS, Azure, GCP, as well as some basic for cloud computing business professionals. We're adding additional assessments as we move forward on job roles, so security engineer, DevOps. These will be great when it comes to a secondary level of assessment. But overall, what you're doing, getting a familiarity of where your teams are with their understanding and comprehension of any of the cloud platforms, or just cloud as a whole. Again, we'll have some for DevOps and things like that as well. To show you what this assessment looks like, again, this is part of the define phase here. When you go into it, you'll be able to see each of the assignees who were sent an assessment. From there, you'll see what their assessment scores were. You're able to go into their skill profiles and see exactly what that looked like. But the more important readout here is what the skill gaps were identified. So the concept of high availability is always going to be assessed. The domains, so this particular assessment is for AWS, each of the domains and where the team is ranking on average. And then ultimately, the overall competency level when it comes to AWS and where that team is ranking. What this does is help you understand and really take an in-depth view of where they're currently at with their understanding, so that you can put together training plans that are going to adequately prepare them through that next cycle as you move forward. The training plan cycle is going to be part of the identify pillar. So you've established your roles, you've done an assessment, you get an idea of where everyone is at. Now you want to move forward to actually putting that into a logical plan for them to actually go about doing the training. A quick word on training plans. What this is, it is an actual mechanism to assign out specific training objectives with a due date. The individuals or the team comprised of each of the individuals track against that. They get weekly updates on their progress. You get management reviews, but this is holding them accountable. So a lot of customers that we work with that have had some type of digital training platform in the past love this. We developed this for this very reason, is because you check a box, you make some training available, it's out there, people have licenses, but consumption rates are super low. This solves for that. This helps you meet those minimal objectives. And as a side benefit, specifically in multi-cloud environment, when they're on a training plan, they're going to be used to going to the platform to satisfy those requirements. They're able to go through all of the training library and look at other areas if something comes up outside of that. So they're not restricted. You'll see consumption rates tend to skyrocket with the effective rollout. Pretty easy UI here. I'm sorry, go ahead, Alex.
Mark, I think I heard the latest numbers were that if you assign a training plan, the likelihood that a team will complete training quadruples.
Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty powerful stuff.
It's phenomenal. Yeah, it's phenomenal. It's been great to see that transformation. I mean, and this has been in a relatively short period of time. Keep in mind, we've been in the training space for a long time. I mean, over 6 years. And for the enterprise side of things, we've been really focusing the platform on the enterprise level. So this is something that we've been working on for the past 2 or 3 years to make this enterprise ready. And over the past year and a half, 2 years, we've just seen great strides in the way people are adopting this, from very advanced use case labs and hands-on labs. It's kind of amazing to see this and how the products are changing the way training is done. So just really quickly on the UI, when you want to assign a training plan out, you'll notice some of these are custom. You have the ability to make custom training plans yourself. Some of the out-of-the-box training plans that Alex was referring to earlier are down here. You just simply land on one that you want to assign. So I'll just quickly pick one here. So machine learning, this is covering GCP, AWS, and Azure, so basic concepts. Here's a really focused one on AWS and DevOps. So I'll just use this one for the demo. You're going to pick a team. If a team's already on a training plan, that means that you can't assign them another one. You want to make sure that they're focused on that specific objective, so you just select the team that you want to assign it to. The team manager, just because they're a manager doesn't mean they know everything and don't need the training, so they can certainly enable it for themselves. And then you just quickly go to select a due date. You can go for a number of hours per week. Again, this is part of defining how long you want people to be able to train, identifying those training requirements. What do they realistically have time for to be able to train? Best practices. We want to make sure you're doing one training plan per cycle or less. I mean, you could do 1 2 months, whatever it may be, based on the length of the content. But within 1 per quarter is a really, really good gauge to make sure you're kind of staying ahead of the curve. You can also come down here and just select the due date if you wanted to as well.
Hey, Mark, is this if you assign me a training plan, am I forced to set aside like a certain block of time on my calendar to do that, or does it give me the flexibility to train when I want to?
Yeah, you can do it. You'll be able to train whenever you want. It's not going to force it. We actually have ability for the individual themselves to be able to set up a calendar reminder for themselves. They're going to get their weekly progress reports anyway via email. But this is a great way for them to integrate a calendar reminder, maybe block off some time when they have it. We certainly have people that get very busy and they have to kind of move that around. But as a best practice, if you can devote some time, that's awesome. And we've got that built into the platform too. It's a really, really great point too. But this is going to hold them accountable for that weekly hour commitment you have as well. This here, the nudges automatically. Just quickly, this is an automated message to them when someone's behind. If they're 70% behind on their training plan, the system will automatically generate an email. It'll do that 3 times. After 3 times for that individual, it will turn off and require some type of manual intervention, which I'll show you here in a moment. I'm going to pop into one of these so you can see when it comes to really measuring that training plan specifically. Here's your overall progress. Every individual, you're able to see what their progress is, their average exam score. So you'll see in a moment when I show you a learning path, there's several different exams in that learning path. They're some foundational concepts, going into different domains, and then a final exam, which if it's a certification prep will mirror, a live exam environment. So you're taking the average of all those in the learning path, will get you a good idea of how well people are comprehending it the last time they looked and where they're tracking. When I was talking about a manual intervention, admins and team managers have the ability to come in here and do a nudge. So if you select all that are behind, you'll do a review and confirm. This message can be changed if you want it to, and that will send that email to them and track the number of times they've been nudged to. So again, this is really great for creating, an accountability factor, but subsequently the stickiness that comes with it by them being drawn to the platform to satisfy what their minimum objectives are to actually go and learn other things that may be outside of their training plan. So you've rolled out your training plans after your assessment, and you're moving into that fourth pillar, which is measuring how all this is working out. I'm not going to spend a ton of time here on analytics. I just quickly want to mention this is your consumption level metric to be able to see how long and people are, what time they're spending on the platform, what they're actually doing. You can look at the individuals, team managers will see their teams, admin can see everyone. One thing I'll mention in particular, if you did have a certification prep, so the final exams on those are at the very end. If you wanted to pull that up, you could actually look and see for that exam how many times someone started it, completed it, and passed it. If they've done it one time and got a 70, they're probably not ready to go and test for that. So they can go and do these labs and exams as many times as they want, but it's best practice to do it a couple times to get that score where they would feel comfortable. They're not cheap, they're not free, so this is a good way to go and do that. But again, you can look at all of the areas that your students are focusing. The measurement this is really exciting and unique to Cloud Academy. Organizations that we're working with love the skill profiles. I love it. It's a great way, something that when I first came to Cloud Academy, it was in a beta phase, wasn't ready to be rolled out. I was super excited to kind of hear about this. It's a question that I was asked in ILT all the time. How can I tell what my students are learning? And you can't put a tangible measurement on that. The certifications, we've already talked about that. You may have to have them for compliance and for partnerships, things like that. But ultimately, how is that benefiting you in your organization and your tech stack? That's something that you have to come to terms with and realize if you want to structure training plans, add to those to make them more effective. We'll talk about ways to do that. But here's your way to really measure and see the quantifiable skill acquisition over any given period of time. When you first go into skill profiles, your view here overall, this is everything they're doing on Cloud Academy. So this is all the platforms, the domains, the concepts, any softwares, tools that they're working with. You'll notice that it automatically populates the top, the 3 clouds here. So you have your overall score, and then you see what basically makes that up. Down here, it's a great measurement to see the week over week progression of skills. When you see some are a little stagnant here, it may be indicative of organizations that are putting more of a focus on AWS. So maybe Azure, GCP have kind of taken a step back, but you see this great trend upwards. Managers love to look at that. Executives love to see this type of reporting. We're growing in our knowledge of the cloud, which is going to only further help us be able to meet our milestones. You get a view of your top users in the organization. Again, this is overall on the platform. You can drill down specifically. So if you're working with AWS directly, you saw in the assessments how it was measuring the different domains. Now you have a full report out of that on skill profiles. It does the same thing. It pulls from the top 3 competencies on the platform for AWS. You can come up here and change these. You can add up to 5 completely in here too. So if you wanted to add a few more, this is just a way to go and look at these specific domains and where you're ranking. If you just don't need that view at all, you can take these out. Really easy to change that. And this is how you can kind of see that trend isolated for AWS overall. And now your view changes to show you the top users in your organization who are most proficient in that cloud platform. Another way that we're seeing people use this, specific projects relative to security, click on that domain. Now your view adjusts, it populates just security, does the same thing to default to those top 3 services, but you see all these services here. Now you can see how they're stacking up specifically in that domain, who your top users are. So if you needed them to lead a project or perhaps work with some of your more junior level associates, this is a great way, and organizations are certainly do this. They tie a lot of these to quarterly reviews with employees. This is, again, it's a game changer in kind of understanding how people are progressing. This is an admin view, so if you're a team manager, you want to look at a couple of teams, you can pull them up here. So this is pulling up the top 3, but based on how your teams were, you can add up to 5. It's just if you thought people were pretty similarly skilled in any domain or specifically in a platform, you can validate those assumptions side by side here.
Hey, Mark, you might be getting to this, but so I apologize if I'm jumping the gun. But I think it's interesting to consider where this data is coming from. All right, it's not just the quizzes and exams, but skill profiles are built based on verification steps in our hands-on labs. And what that means is that this is actually a measure of how effective someone is at actually operating a specific technology. That I think is something maybe you're going to get to.
No, yeah. No, I appreciate you bringing that up, Alex. So I should have mentioned that probably at the very beginning. Apologies for that. But the skill profiles are fed. So you do that initial baseline assessment that populates their initial skill profile. As they move through learning paths and consume more of the quizzes and exams, that continues to populate their profile. And as Alex mentioned, something else that's completely unique are with these hands-on labs, there's validation steps at the end of them. Once they go through those and validate them, and they will add to their skill profile as well. So you're not just getting the understanding and comprehension in and through the exams, but the actual hands-on practical application that they're going to get in and through these learning paths as well. We're going to roll out hands-on lab challenges, which will feed in this too. I'll show you a kind of a lab environment here in a moment in the learning path. But the hands-on lab challenges are super exciting where you're given a scenario, a current state, and a future state. Our guided labs have screenshots to walk the people through completely. So it's hands-on guided practical labs. And then these hands-on lab challenges will be a way to kind of take that away, and they have to kind of maneuver through and get that done without the guidance. So again, those will feed in as well. So this is just a way to verify that not only are they able to take an exam and pass it, but they can actually do it in a live cloud environment, and it's you can feel comfortable about putting them into a production environment after getting that practical application. Thanks for bringing that up, Alex. All right, I mentioned I'm going to come back to Content Engine in a moment. I mentioned I was going to come over and talk about some of the end user stuff, so I'm going to pop back to the dashboard. After you have rolled these things out, you've done your assessments, training plans, etc. This is what your end user is going to see. So any assessment that has been assigned to them is going to show up on their dashboard. The training plan, again, the fact that they have been assigned a training plan is going to show up here. We talked about this a moment ago, but you can add a weekly reminder to your calendar as an end user. You can easily pick up and resume your progress. You have a leaderboard over here, which is going to show them where they're ranking in terms of completion of that training plan. It creates some, competition, gamification, so to speak, to get them moving and active on the training plan to continue to stay on track. And then your activity page is going to show everything that they've done, completed content, things that they may want to go back and continue studying. We have a Discover tab. This is an AI component. So based on the behavioral patterns of the student on the Cloud Academy platform, it will make some picks for them. And the cool thing that we add here, things that are new to the actual library, you're going to see they're added over the last 30 months. I'm going to go over what this custom content is in a moment, but anything that your organization creates that's custom will show up down here as well. Just as an example, our users were extremely excited to see the AWS Machine Learning Specialty Certification. This is a preview, so it's not complete yet. Really great information that's in there so far. As we go through and add more to that, users that are on and have engaged in that learning path will get email notification that content's been added. So really, really exciting stuff to see there. This is a biggie for the end users. So we talked about the skill profile from the admin and the team manager. Listen, the end user has the ability to go and have complete control over their skill profile too. So the same way that the manager is able to go through and look at the platforms, the end user can do this as well. If they want to go in and look on AWS, they see where they stand, they want to make some improvements to their score, this is going to recommend some quizzes that they can go through to start to populate that. If they don't know these subjects, they can browse training for it and go in and look at it. So this creates, again, that stickiness that helps them want to train, to want to go in and improve this. And it doesn't hurt that there's by default, there's a gamification piece where they can see where they rank in these skills. They can't get in depth into any individual skills, but they can see where they rank overall when they're looking at this. So it does create a competitive drive. I know we do it here internally to try to stay on top of the leaderboard as much as possible. So yeah, it's a great benefit to the end users. And you'll see some of these where there's domains that don't have any requisite knowledge, they're blank, so they can go in and start proving skill there as well. All right, I want to go into the training library now. We talked a little bit about rolling these training plans out. I want you to see Learning Path so you can actually see what this is comprised of and why this stuff is extremely beneficial. Navigating through our training library, so you see it starts with the top 3 cloud platform providers, then we go into DevOps, migration, all these different domains that are available. You can click on any of these. You can come refine your search by difficulty level or by domains with any of those platforms. I'm going to specifically go into AWS, not trying to harp on that. Certainly, there's a lot of training that we have for Azure and GCP. I just like to show this specific one. It's a little more of the popular certifications for organizations. We've been talking about paper tigers. So Mark, why are you showing me a certification learning path? Because our certification learning paths, the certification prep, aren't just cert prep. There's no labs when you go and take the exam. Everyone knows that. These are geared to make someone a true practitioner and go and be able to pass the exam. So you're really, really accomplishing a lot when you go in. You'll
Hey,
go in.
Mark,
Yeah, go ahead.
I've got to interrupt you there because I think that the number is well into the thousands now of AWS employees who are leveraging our platform to train for the AWS certification exams. And I think that that's a testament to the high quality of the training content and the fact that there's an experiential component to training, right? It's not just about passing the test, it's about being able to add value to those customer interactions that they have.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. And we just rolled this out for employees of Microsoft, and I think we're already up to a couple hundred within the first week that's been rolled out. So they're using this for preparation too. So it's really it's proven the fact that these learning paths are helping get people not just certified, but again, be true practitioners. So yeah, a great point there. You'll see at the top the difficulty level, the duration. Again, 56 hours of content. Is by far more than what you're going to see in most certification, what would deem certification prep. So there's a lot that comprises that. I'll share with you. Updates made to the learning path. So we make sure that these stay updated. We'll notate what they are. You get a complete overview, the audience, the prereqs, all the learning objectives, each of the domains here, we're going over that, and then opportunities for feedback and some general Q&A. So very exhaustive as far as what we give you at the beginning of what what goes into this learning path. Now, when you get into the meat of it, so to speak, you see the courses. You start to see some exams and labs. So this is a learn, do, and validate model. Learn with the courses, do with the hands-on labs, and there's validation in those, and then validate again with the exams. And quizzes throughout. So I'm just going to quickly, not to make anyone dizzy, I just want to show you exactly how exhaustive this learning path is to get you so much practical experience and hands-on experience with the labs to make you, again, a true practitioner, but also feeling really confident to go and pass that exam. So that's, that final exam there is going to mirror what it looks like when you go and sit down for whether it's AWS, Azure, or GCP. I do want to show you, really quickly what the courses and labs look like. This is just one of these courses. It's not an hour and 30-minute long video with no breaks. This is broken apart by modules here. Gives you a chance to go in and index, they're indexed so they can be searched easily, but knock out a few modules on your training plan. And then the lab setup here, I just want to kind of show you, and again, I want to make the point that these are live labs in AWS, in Azure, in GCP platforms. So you see your lab steps. You start this lab, we give you unique IDs and passwords to log in. I'm just going to quickly pop in and show you, we mean what we say here, but I open the console, paste in the password, and now I'm going to be live in the AWS platform, ready to AWS console rather to start this lab. So again, respective of the platform, it's the same type of UI. So you're going to be live in Azure, live in GCP, and here's the screenshots that I'm talking about that walk someone through. Very easy to go back and forth and maneuver through these. There's a timer up at the top. We've added what we call lab resume, where you get through 4 steps. You get something comes up, you can pause the state of that and go back and do it later. So, and then again, you go through your exams. Taking this now, when you go into your training library, you look, you see some things that you really like in the platform, some of the content that we have, but you want to customize it. You want to make it applicable to your stack. You want to write labs that are indicative of the way that you're doing things. Content Engine is going to allow you to do that, and you'll be able to house all of that content here. So here's some examples of internal certification content exams. And then you put these into learning paths as well. So here's a few examples of specific AI services, security compliance, and governance and compliance, ways to go in and truly make these custom to your organization and to your stack. And I'll just pop over just really quickly into Content Engine. This is the UI for it. So custom resources, the ability to upload static files. You can actually embed videos, pull in external training content you have or things that you may have available, put those into the custom resources. You can create your own questions and exams. You can literally go in here and modify lab steps, write your own code, have your own provisioning blocks, really get truly customized in the way you do that. And then you put them all in learning paths and assign them out by putting them in training plans as well. So this is something that we go into full demos with organizations that want to take a look at this. We go really in depth looking at some of these areas. Again, I'll draw back to the fact that organizations that are using these are partnering with us, with solutions engineers like myself, and then our customer success team to make sure they're adequately trained on these specific products, how they're used. Skill profiles is another example where we just launched some documentation on what goes in to the scores, what types of questions, not just arbitrary numbers on a skill profile, but what does it mean to be a beginner? What can you expect a beginner to be able to do? What can you expect someone who's intermediate? And what can you expect of someone who is advanced? That will conclude what I wanted to show you when it came to the demo portion of this. Alex, did you have anything else you wanted to add before I turn it over to Francesca to kind of lead this Q&A?
I don't. I think that if we have any questions, we can address those now.
Awesome.
Yes, we just have a couple of questions and we don't have much time, so I'll just probably ask a couple. First question is, your suggestions seem quite comprehensive, but also time consuming. What should I focus on if we don't really even have a formal direction in cloud?
Okay,
Alex,
Mark,
I'll take that one.
I'll take that one, Mark. So I think you're right. It does seem, or the person with the question is right. It does seem like overkill, perhaps, if you don't have a formal direction in cloud computing. I think that the effort of going through and attempting to define a roadmap to get clear on the roles and to put some training in place, even around the fundamentals, is an important exercise. You're going to have to do those things down the road anyway, and it can really help to, I guess, pull different parts of your organization into the right direction. So these are best practices that we've learned through working with hundreds of enterprise organizations who are doing it right. Not everyone is going to apply to every single situation. And I think that in terms of the time-consuming piece, I'll let Mark speak to that, but I think that might be in relation to some of the customization that people were seeing. Maybe Mark, if you want to speak to how we've tried to make it easy to customize some of these, basically everything in our library.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to keep going back to the same thing, but the partnership with solutions engineers, customer success. I failed to mention when it comes to Content Engine and customizing that, another part that's creating stickiness there. It's automatically enabled by default for your end users. They can actually go in and start to create training. If they're the ones that are kind of doing this work, they're creating the applications, whatever it may be. They can draw up the training. But by default, it has to be approved by an admin. You have the team manager role as well, who are taking some of that burden off the admin to roll this out on a per team basis. So the partnership, the enablement of the end users, the team manager role, these are all things that help kind of minimize the impact. Where I agree, a lot of the stuff we're talking about, and we've talked about it in customer calls before, it does seem like a lot, but it doesn't have to be on just one person. And as Alex said, you're not going at this alone. We have a support staff here, back end guys on the lab and our product team that are happy to get in on these calls and help out too. So yeah, these are all things that help towards shrinking the learning curve too.
Yeah,
And
I'm sorry, Francesca. One more point on that, just because it got me thinking. We talked a bit earlier about the importance of skills in the organization to your organization's future. It may seem time consuming, but it's really the right thing to do to attack this thing programmatically and comprehensively. So it will take some effort. Yeah.
Good point.
All right, we have another one here. In terms of the social aspect of collaborating on the platform as a user, where can I post questions, interact with my company, and track certifications?
That I'll take this one, Alex. Just I've been working with the product team pretty closely on this, and this is an exciting. That's something that our customers have been wanting, and as I mentioned, being focused on the enterprise. We have been trying to be as forward-thinking as possible. We've been doing this longer than anyone else when it comes to setting up, digital training in the enterprise. That social media type, ability to collaborate with your team members, your colleagues, ask questions is something that we are working on now. The ability for you to actually put in and house where your certifications are, to be able to know who's got them, when they expire, when they need to be renewed, things like that. In addition to looking at CPE management, which we just added as a component now too. These are all things that we're working on and are currently anticipated to be ready within this next quarter. So again, an exciting update there as well. I'm happy to be able to share that.
Awesome. And just one last quick question: how frequently is your content updated?
I'll take this one too, Alex. This is I get to work a lot. I love the fact that I get to work with our product team, our content team, marketing, just a lot of the different departments we have. On the content side of things, I've never worked. This includes product, but I've never worked in an organization where there's such pride taken in not just the product, but the content that's behind it as well. A great product without content to support it doesn't really do much. So we believe in the content that we have on the platform. Being laser focused on cloud and DevOps gives our content team the ability to stay really current on content. So certifications, you'll find we're often first to market a lot of times with new certifications, typically around a 15 to 30 day time frame for updated certifications. There's caveats, when you have new releases like the machine learning, where we released a preview, and at Ignite when they dumped all their existing certifications and put in new ones. So there's some caveats there which may expand that timeline a little bit. And then on services and new services, based on the needs of our customers, we collaborate with them to figure out what the impact is going to be to their organization, what's most important to them, and we roll those out. We prioritize those based on that. So it's roughly a 60-day time frame on new services as well. Again, some caveats like a reInvent where they release a ton of new services, but you'll find that these are areas that we really excel in keeping content updated. And as I mentioned, if you go into a learning path, you complete that and it's updated, you will be notified when that learning path is updated and be directed right back to the part where you need to go and complete it to stay current on it. So we continually keep in communication with our customers to make sure they have the exposure to the latest and greatest. Great question. I'm glad that was asked.
Awesome. So that's all the time that we have for today. Thank you to both Mark and Alex for being with us today. Many thanks to everyone who joined us. You will receive the recording of the webinar as soon as it is available. Just one last note, in the next few weeks, we'll be at 3 different AWS summits between the US and the UK. So don't miss the chance to meet the team and talk to our experts. We'll be in Atlanta on May 2nd, in London on May 8th, and in Chicago on the 30th. If you're looking to close your cloud skills gap and train your teams, visit us at cloudacademy.com, where you can also access our previous webinars on demand. Thank you all, and goodbye.